Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Thursday night. So lovely to have you here for another episode of the Prime Time Show. We are going to talk about DeAndre Hopkins shutting down any rumors about him potentially leaving the Tennessee Titans. We're going to poach some free agents from the AFC South, and a weekend bounce back is how we will end the show, because that's how we always end the show around here. Good to have you guys in for another episode, and looking forward to having this discussion together. Before we do that, need you guys to share the broadcast around on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch, wherever you are spending your time with us. We would be happy to have you here tonight. If you're hanging out on Twitter, please retweet the show, where DeAndre Hopkins quote tweeted a tweet earlier and said, "That's cap." You can retweet it if you're hanging out on Twitter. If you're on Facebook Live, you can share now to public. That's in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. If you're on YouTube or Twitch, like Stephen King, who says the stash is looking strong. Yes, the stash is combine ready. We are prepared to head up to Indianapolis next week, and I will be taking you guys up there with me, as is the custom, for us to talk about prospects, pros, everything in between, and looking forward to those discussions. But we have to get through one more primetime show before we can get to Combine Week. So let's go ahead and get it done. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Zen Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising. I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you by Zen Sports. Download the app, plug in the promo code ATOZTN, get up to $1,000 on your no danger first wager. Zensports.com for more information and to find out about their VIP betting program. TrueMav Fitness in the Gulch, the best workout in Middle Tennessee, can be found at TrueMav Fitness. For your first workout free as a Middle Tennessee resident, go to TrueMavFitness.com. Okay, DeAndre Hopkins, not interested in engaging in the rumors, not even interested in letting any rumors gain traction with his potential or the idea that he may be displeased with the Tennessee Titans, that he may not be interested in staying with the Tennessee Titans in 2024. There was a tweet that started to make the rounds, or a post, whatever you're calling it, on X these days, where an account called NFL Rumors, which I've been aggregated by before, in fact, ironically enough, about a DeAndre Hopkins thing that they got wrong, a thing that they said I said about DeAndre Hopkins that I didn't actually say. It was just a clip we played on the radio show, and they wrongfully attributed it to me, for those of you who remember DeAndre Hopkins watch this summer. But the NFL Rumors account puts out something to watch. Tennessee Titans DeAndre Hopkins could look for another team next season on a mutual parting of ways. Hopkins came there with Mike Vrabel and his former offensive coordinator with the Texans. Both are now gone. D-Hop would have a $16.4 million cap savings if cut with a June 1st designation. So what is a June 1st designation? Well, a June 1st designation is a deadline that allows teams to get to a certain point before money either turns guaranteed, before contract bonuses, salary bonuses, roster bonuses, and things like that, depending on the player's contract, come into place. And there is financial flexibility if the Titans were to wait until after June 1st to release DeAndre Hopkins. But you may be asking, why would they do that? Well, the answer is they wouldn't. And DeAndre Hopkins was very quick to shut down said rumor, but we will get into this here in just a second with the wide receiver's response to this, because as you might imagine, based on the graphic, it was a response of cap. Cap is what we're calling this. So a situation for the Titans and DeAndre Hopkins that doesn't actually exist, that he felt the need to shut down anyway, which is good, which is why we're going to talk about DeAndre Hopkins and his future with the Titans together right now. Your Two Rivers Ford take in the comment section on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch this evening. How did DeAndre Hopkins perform in 2023 relative to expectations? Whatever your expectations were for D-Hop, what did you think of the way that he performed in 2023? Jared, more interested in the mustache than he is in DeAndre Hopkins. That's okay. I understand it's distracting. Corey D. Jackson says, Nuke is our number one wide receiver. Nothing else to see here. He agrees. That's why he says cap on the internet. DHop headed to Houston, says Lewman007. So I assume that's a shot at DeAndre Hopkins. I can't imagine that he is headed to Houston. He is currently staying in Houston because they have a home in Houston. And I don't know that I would call him DHop because all he does is catch the damn thing even the interceptable passes that Levis sometimes throws his way. This is indisputably the best player on the Titans offense. So why on earth would the Titans want to let him go? Well, the answer is they don't, which is why he's calling cap. His statement, though, indicates that he is not interested in leaving and that he was willing to shut it down very quickly without letting it kind of fester out there on the internet is a good sign. We're going to talk about this together. How did DeAndre Hopkins perform relative to your expectations? Right after I remind you that your Two Rivers Ford take is presented by Two Rivers Ford. Quality American-made Ford vehicles and award-winning customer service. Go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com, where DeAndre Hopkins is also a customer. The Two Rivers Ford customer base is strong, whether it's Hopkins, Coach Mack, Ramon Foster, Don Davenport. Hell, I'm a customer at Two Rivers Ford, the Mid-South's most trusted Ford dealership, tworiversford.com for more information. All right, how do you perform relative to your expectations? David Smith says DHop staying with us. Yes, but that doesn't answer my question. AZ Mix says DHop was 80% of the offense, so fair to assume that he exceeded AZ Mix expectations. Chris Frazier, he keeps it real. He absolutely does keep it real. But again, that does not answer my question. How did he perform relative to expectations, guys? It really doesn't feel like that hard of a question to answer. And Stephen King does so. He says it was as good as expected from a 5-win team. Well, they actually won 6 games. Not to give them more credit than they deserve, but they did technically win 6 games last year. So by any measure that you could have set for DeAndre Hopkins, he exceeded the level of expectation that I had for him. 75 receptions, tied for 31st among qualified receivers, qualified skill position players, right? That's tight ends and running backs too. 1,057 yards, 21st in the NFL last season, 7th in touchdowns, 18th, an average yards per reception of 14.1, good for 64th in the NFL. We know that the Titans did not win many games. We know that the Titans finished 6-11 at the bottom of the division, that DeAndre Hopkins alone is not enough to make this a viable NFL franchise, but he makes them a hell of a lot more competent than they otherwise deserve to be. He absolutely exceeded the expectations that I had for him, just for reference. I thought that DeAndre Hopkins was going to come in here. I thought that he was going to be a functional player. I, in fairness, thought that Treylon Burks and Kyle Phillips or even Chig would be more of viable threats that would allow DeAndre Hopkins to be a high-level player still. And even if he's, out there attracting attention to allow other guys to eat, that he was going to be a nice complement for the offense. I never would have projected that he would have been the driving force of the offense last year, as he was. And I really thought that even as I know DeAndre Hopkins' game was going to age better than a lot of wide receivers, for example, Julio Jones, just because of the way that he plays, the way that he uses his body, the way that his skill set and technique lends itself to aging well. Nobody ages well, but that Hopkins and his style would age well in an NFL offense that he didn't have to be the primary focal point of, and of course, which he was and ended up succeeding anyway. DeAndre Hopkins exceeded any expectation that I personally had for him, even as I know him to be a Hall of Fame caliber player. And even as I know that DeAndre Hopkins is a very, very motivated player, very, very cognizant of the way that he's discussed on social media. I know that a lot of players will tell you they ignore the outside noise. I very much appreciate that DeAndre Hopkins is transparent and saying, no, he doesn't. Not only does he hear the outside noise, he seems to relish in it because it drives him, which is fine. I'm for that. Like, I don't understand why it's so difficult to acknowledge that, yes, people say things on the internet. You don't have to get wrapped up in it. It's hard not to get wrapped up in it. And, you might accuse Hopkins of getting wrapped up in it, but it uses it as a motivational tool, which is what you would expect the people performing at the highest levels of their profession to do. And that is exactly what DeAndre Hopkins did. So there's been a lot of different kinds of these discussions, whether it's this NFL Rumors account saying something to keep an eye on. DeAndre Hopkins could win out of Tennessee with no factual basis for that argument, other than he plays for the Titans. The Titans are shit, and DeAndre Hopkins probably wants to play for a more competitive football team. Okay, that's a fair connection to draw in most circumstances, and I'm sure that DeAndre Hopkins would like to do a great deal more winning. But I also know that DeAndre Hopkins likes the city of Nashville, think he likes the situation with the Titans. I know he likes Will Levis. And we haven't talked to him since they hired Brian Callahan or anything like that, but he certainly hasn't expressed any kind of displeasure about the hiring. In fact, if I'm an offensive skill position player currently on this roster, I'm looking around at the new coaching staff and being like, all right, they're going to give us a fighting chance here based on what we've seen from Cincinnati and how they put their players in position to succeed. We're going to read more of your comments on this, and then we'll get into a discussion about poaching free agents from the AFC South. Addition by subtraction or subtraction by addition, depending on how you want to play this game. I'll explain more about what I mean with that here in just a second, right after I remind you that the Primetime program is presented by True Math Fitness in the Gulch. Go to truemathfitness.com for your first workout free as a Middle Tennessee resident. No workout ever recycled, no workout ever repeated, only there to maximize your fitness goals. True Math Fitness is the best place for you to go. It's very conveniently located downtown Nashville in the Gulch, and they are there to make sure that you achieve those fitness goals. Not everybody is built the same. Not everybody's body responds the same. That's why they have all manner of different workout programs for you, whether it's group fitness classes, personal training, or, of course, just a membership to go work out as you please in their open gym. TrueMathFitness.com for that first workout free. How did DeAndre Hopkins perform relative to expectation? Corey D. Jackson says he was brought here to be the number 2. He exceeded expectations. Burks was supposed to be the number 1, and of course he doesn't think that way. He's a walking gold jacket. Corey is talking about Hopkins. We are speaking on targets here. Well, no, I disagree about Hopkins being brought here to be the number 2. I think that they knew they needed a number 1 wide receiver. I think they knew, in fact, I know they knew that they could promised DeAndre Hopkins that he would be the number 1 wide receiver in this offense, and that Treylon Burks, while he should be more of a threat in this offense, I don't think that the designs were ever for him to be the number 1. He's never going to be AJ, right? Even though that's kind of the mold that he was projected in as a prospect coming out of college. One from Arkansas, the other from Ole Miss, right? They're physically built similarly. Burks is actually a bit bigger than A.J. Brown is. A bit taller. I don't know if he's as broad as A.J., but still, he's a physically imposing player and has some of the similar skill sets. Could be a threat out of a big slot player. The way that A.J. Brown was used at Ole Miss in college, that was not the way that Treylon Burks was utilized. He was basically just get him in space, figure out as many different ways to put the ball in his hands as humanly possible. But I disagree with the premise that DeAndre Hopkins was brought in here to be a 2. Now, if it worked out that way, that's swell, because Treylon Burks, you could feasibly make a bigger part of your future if that all went according to plan there. But that's not how it went. Treylon Burks is anything but that. DeAndre Hopkins is the only bona fide wide receiver that you have on the roster, because the other bona fide wide receiver that you have on the roster, NWI, is scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent. And by the way, should be getting some of these $8 to $10 million offers. I honestly think so. And I know that sounds insane, but I really think that NWI has proven with a track record of consistency, of reliability, of availability. And I would be surprised if he's not in this kind of third tier pay grade for wide receivers in free agency, which would connote somewhere between $8 to $10 million, where the top of the market is making damn near 30. And guys like A.J. Brown are making about $25 million a year annually. I think you can break it up for. I think you could break a piece off for NWI. However I pronounce this, is it Malili? W8007 says, wait, what is the fake news? Well, the fake news is that DeAndre Hopkins wants out of Tennessee. That's not a real thing. But DeAndre Hopkins took to social media, which shut it down anyway. Burks played like a number 2, says Brian Coburn. Well, that's just a number 2 is in a bowel movement, because then yes, I'm inclined to agree with you. If that's the number 2 that you're referencing, sure as hell not a number 2 wide receiver. Played like a number 2 wide receiver? No, Treylon Burks played like a practice squad player. Treylon Burks played like a guy who's lost a bit of confidence in himself. Treylon Burks played like a dude that's not going to belong on an NFL roster here at the end of his rookie contract. Played like a number 2. What are you talking about? Now, maybe he is actually trying to make a shit joke. I don't know. But like, Treylon Burks was not as good as NWI. Treylon Burks was not as good as Chris Moore, for God's sakes. So how you would run Treylon Burks through any prism of competency is wild to me. I really don't understand how anybody could look at the Treylon Burks experience and say, yeah, that is somebody who I have any degree of confidence in. And again, I'm not mad at the guy because he keeps getting hurt. But the reality of the situation is, even when he wasn't hurt, his performance struggled. And I know he tried to play through some stuff. The injury that he experienced in the joint camp in Minnesota, I think lingered with him for a period of time. They shut him down for a period of time to try and let him get right. And then when he came back, he still wasn't. He just still doesn't do anything. I mean, it, it's frustrating. Jake Barr says, Buck, you play like a number two. Maybe, but I'm the only one around here, and I won't even let there be a number two on this show. Bert's the closest thing to a number two, a sidekick they'd give me on this show, and I won't let him be on camera half the time. But that's the ego in me. And also, I'm not a collaborative type, so I would not fit in with your organization. But he had crappy coaches, Buck, says BF. I don't give a shit who he had. You know what I'm saying? Like, you are a professional athlete. Your job is to perform. When Treylon Burks was available and on the field, he did not satisfy that. I think the best performance that Treylon had, I mean, we can look up his box scores real quick. And I know that statistical performances are not the end-all, be-all, but at a certain point, he has to produce something. Treylon Burks' best statistical game of the season, given that he had 16 catches and 221 yards. Holy shit. Looking at this is season totals. I want game logs. He had oh my God. He had 6 targets in the Cleveland game. He had 1 catch for 5 yards. He never had more than 3 catches in a game. His best statistical production, he was targeted 4 times, caught 3 balls for 76 yards. That was the best contribution from Treylon Burks at any point. It was in the overtime win against the Chargers. The next highest receiving total that he had was the 1916 loss to the Texans at home, where he produced 3 catches for 62 yards. And again, he did not have a touchdown this season. He has 1 career touchdown in 2 career seasons, which is crazy. This is a professional wide receiver. I don't know how anybody could defend Treylon Burks at this point in time. But we're not here to further relitigate the issues with Treylon Burks. The combine is right around the corner. Free agency is right after that. You're going to be in the wide receiver market in both. So you hope that you solidify your situation beyond just DeAndre Hopkins, who's on an expiring contract this year and is aged 32. And while I love watching him play, I love watching him work, and I'm certainly not going to be the person to doubt him. You don't want to be holding the bag for DeAndre Hopkins if for whatever reason at age 32 it goes this year. And there's nothing to indicate that it will, other than time comes for us all. At this is certainly in this sport and certainly at that particular position. But like I said, Hopkins is going to lend himself better to aging than most, and I think that was absolutely evidenced last year. All right, let's get to the AFC South discussion. Now, the question, because it's not in my email, is this. If you could pull one free agent, if you could sign one free agent who's on an expiring deal from an AFC South team, who would it be? So, for example, Calvin Ridley with the Jacksonville Jaguars is on an expiring deal. Would you poach Calvin Ridley? And technically, you don't have to poach him because he's going to be available on the free agent market. But would you sign Calvin Ridley, 1, to help the Titans, but 2, to hurt the Jags? Who of that list, and I'll pull up the entire AFC South free agent list just so we have a point of reference, because there's going to be a handful of names on here that I think you guys might be interested in. I think a lot of you guys are going to immediately default to Calvin Ridley, given that I've just given that example, and that's fine. You can make that the example. But we'll talk about that together right after I remind you that the Primetime program is presented by Zen Sports. Zen Sports is your place to wager. No matter what the sport is, Zen Sports has you covered. We can talk about Zen Sports, the newest sports book in Tennessee that's bringing sports betting to a whole new level. Literally, they've got their boosted same-game parlays. When you sign up for Zen Sports, you'll automatically earn up to $1,000 on your no-danger first wager, which I've told you about before. And if your bet loses, you'll be reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to $1,000. And now, Zen is offering 10 boosted same-game parlays for NBA and NHL every single day. That's 10 bets, each with a 10% boost, so you can bet every single one of them. Zensports.com for more information. Gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. No danger wager, limited to plus 500 odds to qualify. Boosted odds are derived from equivalent parlay bets offered in Tennessee. Must be 21 or up in Tennessee to bet. Okay, so who would you poach from an AFC South team as we are going along? Brian Cromer says, get Hollywood Brown. Brian doesn't want to play the game. That's okay. Hollywood Brown is an expiring contract for the Arizona Cardinals. Brian, I don't know if you're unfamiliar with the NFL divisions. The Cardinals do not play in the AFC South. We are talking about the AFC South. JQ says, does this count our own players? Well, that would be, sure, but we're talking about trying to hurt another team. You guys are really overcomplicating this game. I bet Bert didn't anticipate that when he put this particular exercise together. So sure, but like Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman's a good example, the Colts wide receiver. Would you sign Michael Pittman not just to help your wide receiver core, but to hurt the Indianapolis Colts, who he is an expiring free agent for? I think that there's a couple of wide receivers that are going to be on this list. Stephen King says Zach Moss. Brian says Pittman. Jonathan Grenard says Puka for the Houston Texans. Oh, maybe somebody was listening to the morning show because this was an exercise that was stolen from them. I think that there's a couple of different options that you could look at. And then I just realized that we had a 9-minute DeAndre Hopkins highlight reel in the bank that I didn't get to. I'm sorry, Bert, for wasting your time with that. Either way, Pittman and Ridley, the wide receivers, they're going to be plentiful in the free agent market. And I think that's going to be a fascinating discussion once we start to get into it here in the next couple of weeks.
Tag leads to a long-term deal and you staying in Indy, which seems like you're open to, then it's a good thing. You're cool with it.
Yeah. I mean, Indy has been my home for the past 4 years. So, I love it there and everything's great. And, but what I told myself is I won't sacrifice my career potential for comfortability, which is why I do kind of want to just see what's out there and see if I can find a fit that could potentially be better or maybe not. So that's, the teams do it. So the players should be able to do that as well.
So that's Michael Pittman talking about his pending free agent status. So Grenard, Bert, do you want to make the case for Grenard? Because that is somebody that I know you would have been interested in had you participated in this game on the morning show. The Texans are a team that is going to be in a very, very good position to succeed. They have the 6th most cap space. You have the 4th most cap space in the NFL. Bert, you want to make the case for Grenard?
I think he makes the case for himself. If you look how he played last year, the addition of Derek Barnett really helped him in the postseason. You could see in the Ravens game, he was a man possessed. It wasn't just Will Anderson who was getting off. And the other case for Grenard is getting somebody else besides Jeffrey Simmons. Somebody beside Jeffrey Simmons who can help him in the pass rush, take attention away from him, go opposite Harold Landry. If you can get 3 guys in your pass rush, that helps your secondary. The woes about not having a cornerback, not having a star safety anymore are lessened by the fact that your pass rush is going to get home a little bit quicker. Now, the Texans could still tag him hypothetically, but if he hits the open market, there's no reason the Titans shouldn't be after a 26-year-old premium pass rusher.
I'm just surprised. I guess I'm surprised that I haven't seen tags at all just yet. There hasn't been much activity on the market that way. And Grenard, as you said, is a young ascending player. Last year for the Texans, 12.5 sacks. He had 1 forced fumble. He played in 15 of their 17 games. And at 6'3", 263 would be a nice compliment, because they don't really get anything out of Rashad Weaver. Arden Key is inconsistent. He's not expensive, but he's inconsistent. You basically gave Arden Key the Danico Autry contract, and you can certainly easily determine which contract is actually more worth the value that they've paid out. And Autry is an unrestricted free agent that we don't know what's going to happen with that. And he plays as much edge as anybody in that defense. They play him inside, they play him outside. They're very multiple with how they deploy, or at least they were under a previous defensive coaching staff. Grenard is an interesting one for sure.
I bet we hear some news out of Indy this week at Combines, whether Pittman, T. Higgins, Justin Matabike, if any of those guys are going to get tagged or not. So you'll probably be the one to update us on that.
All right. You've done your due diligence.
See ya.
Be gone. All right. So now, with that being said, I think there's a variety of different options. Corey D. Jackson says, give me Buckner all day and twice on Sunday. Well, he's not a pending free agent. Forrest Buckner will not be available for teams to sign. But sure, I would love to Forrest Buckner next to Jeffrey Simmons, just like I love Danico Autry next to Jeffrey Simmons if I'm a Titans fan. All right. So let's wrap things up with a weekend bounce back and send you on your way. You know how to play this game. Who needs to bounce back most in sports this week? We'll talk about it. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. Let me know. Nobody until Jake Hughes brought up Josh Allen. Josh Allen is a pending free agent. Not the Bills Josh Allen, but the Jags Josh Allen, of course, the edge rusher who really came on strong this year. I believe he had damn near 17 sacks, if not more than 17 sacks. In fact, I think he had 17 and a half sacks in 2023. None of you said Josh Allen until the very end. So I would be shocked to see him hit the open market, but he hadn't been tagged just yet. Who needs to bounce back most in sports? Matt Stanley says AT&T. Yeah. I don't have AT&T. I have Verizon, no free ads. But I heard you all who have AT&T had a hell of a day trying to figure out what was going on with your cell phone service. We'll talk about it together right after I remind you that the Primetime program is presented by the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Go to GaryAshton.com. They are like no other. They are not like AT&T. They will not let you down in a big spot. The Ashton Group is here to give you the intel edge you need to buy or sell your home in Middle Tennessee. Go to GaryAshton.com for more information. Who needs to bounce back most in sports? Boilermakers, says Eddie Gwartney. Is that how I pronounce it? Need a bounce back and got it in a big way. Well, that's unfortunate. I hate Purdue. I hope that they lose every game. Indiana refuses to win a game. So my Indiana Hoosiers need a bounce back. The only way that the Hoosiers could bounce back is by firing Mike Woodson, which I don't anticipate happening at least until the end of the season when my team misses not just the tournament, but the NIT, and it forces me to cause some form of self-harm. But we don't have to get that. We don't have to get into the deep and dark details of my miserable sports life, because the only team that I care about as an actual fan just continues to let me down. I know how Vols fans feel. This is what Tennessee football fans have dealt with for basically the last 15 years. It's just been my entire existence that Indiana has been this for me, and that's it makes me very, very sad. Corey Smith says Adrian Peterson needs a bounce back. I'm unfamiliar with Adrian Peterson's need for a bounce back. God knows if I'll probably read about it after the primetime show concludes. But the people who most need a bounce back is this Dallas Mavericks couple who decided to call Kevin Durant the B word as he was walking out onto the court for a recent game between the Suns and the Mavs. Don't call the athletes names and not expect the athletes to react. If you call the 7 foot tall, Kevin Durant's 7 foot, right? Or he's 6'11". He's right up there. If you call the 7 footer a B word and he hears you, he's going to turn around and not want to dap you up. That is one of the, I'm not anti-fan. I'm anti-fan only when fans think the purchase of a ticket gives them the right to do whatever the hell they want in an arena, right? Like dumping popcorn on Russell Westbrook, or what happened recently in the NFL that would be a similar kind of thing. I just remember a Seahawks defensive lineman damn near crawling into the stands in Jacksonville because somebody poured a beer on him, right? Like, if you harass the giant, scary athletes and they react, you're not allowed to play it off cool like this dude and his significant other, wife, girlfriend, whatever, tried to do. It's one of the most cringeworthy things that I've seen But I love that Kevin Durant checked them in real time. Is it Grover Stewart? Is that what happened? Did Grover Stewart go at the fans recently? I don't remember that exactly. Billy Jones says, don't go Ron Artest. But you know what? I don't know. If somebody throws a beer at you, I think you're within your rights to knock that person the bleep out. Like, I'm not going to say I'm pro Ron Artest. Actually, I might. I'm a Pacers fan. I'll go pro Ron Artest in that moment. I think if you agitate the athletes that way, then you are getting whatever you deserve on the back end. I'm pro Malice at the Palace. Don't harass the athletes. Don't touch the athletes. Don't throw things at the athletes unless you want things to be reciprocated. Now, of course, they're never going to let that happen. The athletes will be fined, all these other things, this, that, and the other. But yeah, I would say you can't do that. MB says, I think fans can basically say anything with the exception of racist and sexist comments. Well, yeah, I mean, with the exception of racist and sexist comments. But are you saying now racist and sexist does not fall under the category of calling Kevin Durant the B word? So is the fan entitled to that? Now, maybe you should say, yeah, the fan's entitled to that, but also they're going to have to pay the consequences if Kevin Durant decides to turn around and checks your ass. I'm really pro athlete in this kind of moment. I think that fans can be super entitled about this stuff. And I don't blame the athletes for having bad reactions to it. Now, if you're a golfer and you're sick of the drunks at the Waste Management Open, when that whole thing is marketed as the drunkest event on tour, then yeah, you probably got to eat it a little more when somebody's chirping in your backswing. But save that. I think for the most part, I'm pro athletes in this particular setting. All right, that's going to do it for us tonight. That's going to do it for us this week on Primetime. We appreciate you guys hanging out. There will be a 615 Sessions podcast tomorrow. Keep an eye out for that. The radio show from 10 to 1. Our buddy Joel Corey, the former NFL agent, wrote a very, very good piece at CBSSports.com all about negotiating Derrick Henry's contract and his market. We're going to talk to Joel about that tomorrow at 12:20. Also, Coach Mack is going to be on the show, and we'll have a great time together. So make sure you're hanging out on the radio show. Check out the 615 Sessions podcast. Check out the install with Greg Cosell, where we started to preview the wide receiver position before Greg and I head up to the combine. Greg, me, and the rest of the NFL head up to the combine I'm going to be there from Monday through Thursday. Oh, by the way, before I forget, radio show on next Tuesday in the 10 o'clock hour, in the first hour. We're going to have both Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan on the radio show with me live and in person in Indianapolis. So you'll hear from both your general manager and your head coach. If you guys have questions that you specifically want me to ask, I'll probably pull one or two of the best ones. Send those to me on Instagram in my DMs. I'm more likely to see them on Instagram than I am on Twitter just because there's fewer of you and I'll be able to get to them quicker. So if you have a question specifically that you would like me to ask Rand or Callahan, they will both be on the radio show next Tuesday. At Buck Rising on Instagram is where you can send them. And, I'll probably pick the two best ones and we'll even read your Instagram handle on the radio show when I ask them the questions. And we'll look forward to a good conversation with your GM and head coach. I usually end this show with a clip that tends to bother you two, whether it's or not you two, but you all, whether it's the Colts fans singing "Bleep the Titans" or it's the Chargers fan decking Mitch. I'm blanking on Mitch's last name. Why can't I think of Mitch's last name? Mitch Firkins. Who fought on behalf of the Titans fans and lost valiantly in the parking lots of Nissan Stadium. Instead, I'll end it with a 9-minute clip of DeAndre Hopkins. See y'all.
Still 50 seconds left. Potentially getting the ball back to their offense. Tannehill off the near side. It's caught.
Oh, boy.
Tannehill dropping a dime to Hopkins.
Almost the exact same catch. Almost the exact same catch. In that time, it looks like he's able to get both feet down. Huge play. There it is. 2 feet down, possession, all the stuff you look for.
Sliding that protection to the right. It's Tannehill throwing.